Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to The Landing. Welcome back to The Landing. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of introducing a very special guest, someone who has not only been a lifelong friend, but also a true son of Down East. His roots run deep in our coastal heritage, and his love for this place is as natural as the tides. From the stories he tells to the way he carries on the traditions of our community, his passion for where he's from is both obvious and endearing. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Please welcome Corey Lawrence. Hello, and welcome to The Landing. I am already smiling. I'm looking across the table here to somebody who I think a little bit of. Tell them who I have here with me. Tell them what your name, who's your crowd, and where you're from.
My name is David Corey Lawrence, and I'm from Harkers Island. I live just off the island now, but whenever someone asks where I live, I say I'm from Harkers Island.
That's right.
I come from the west end of the island. The place that I'm at, the foot of Red Hill, is where I was born and raised. And my parents were David Lawrence and Carol Willis Lawrence. And I was very fortunate to be born of goodly parents.
Yes, you were. Yes,
Yep.
you were. That's an understatement. They
Yep.
were wonderful. Well, Corey, I appreciate you coming down and talking with us a little bit today. You have a lot of irons in the fire. You're a busy man. But this wouldn't be right without having Corey involved somehow.
Wow.
I want you to think back, and we're going to talk a little bit about Harkers Island used to be and what living down east means and that kind of thing. So you can start wherever you want to, and I might chime in a little bit, and I promise I won't divulge any stories that you don't want me to, but where do you want to start?
Oh my gracious. So just any random story about growing up?
Any random story. That's our favorite.
Oh my goodness. Most people are afraid to be asked to speak or talk because, well, I don't know why. I guess they're afraid of filling time. It's the opposite for me. You're going to have to reel me in because once I get going, there's no telling how long I would sit here and just.
I will reel you in if we need to.
Well, growing up on the island was great. I was born in 70. I feel a lot older than that, but I think it's because growing up in my house, I guess I'll start there. Growing up at the old home place, Twin Oaks, we had a lot of family. It was a revolving door of people in and out of our house, and we didn't spend nowhere near the amount of time being occupied with television or electronics back in those days. I do recall growing up in a house that was always filled with music. As Mama did her housekeeping or cooking, she loved having music playing.
Yep.
And this has nothing to do with growing up on the island. This is just Corey being a little boy growing up. But I was just raised listening to, I was the DJ for Mama. I would put on an album and we would listen to something for a little while. And then she'd say, play something else. But the collection was everything from the Beatles to Stevie Wonder, and then I'd put on Handel's Messiah or something like that, or George Jones. I mean, we listened to everything, and so I appreciate growing up in a house where, from an early age, I was taught the love of the arts. From Mama, it was always poetry and literature and things like that, and music. And from Daddy, it was just appreciating our natural beauty and where we're from, and art as far as painting and decoys and drawing and that kind of stuff. So I guess I never remember a time where those things weren't a great influence on me.
Yeah.
Now I've lost my train of
What
thought.
a blessing.
Yeah, what a blessing
Oh,
it was to be
gracious.
raised like that. But I
Yeah.
was talking about people coming in and out of our house. So the reason I might come across older is because hearing my aunts and uncles and family and friends telling stories and sharing stories on the front porch or in the living room or wherever, the kitchen most of the time is where we were gathered.
Mm-hmm.
I heard the same stories over and over where old stories of the island became real to me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You felt
So
like you knew
sometimes
those
my
people.
memories is not of what I actually saw and knew for myself. It's just what I heard so much of.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally after church or something like that, we always take an opportunity to ride Shell Point. And if I've got the youngerns in the car with me, I love starting at Shell Point and driving really, really slow, which used to irritate me when I was a kid, people driving slow. But now they say that I drive like an old man. But as we go down the island, I love to point out things like there was a restaurant right here, mainly at Shell Point. I'm pointing over there for those of you that can't see me at home. I'm pointing right over there. There used to be a restaurant there and a fish house off of the parking lot at the park service area down here. But I'll start pointing out all the old landmarks where things used to be that are no longer there.
Yeah.
And my kids really can't wrap their mind around it. Like right up past the bank, the old car wash. Do you remember that?
I do. I do.
Yeah, so I mean, I point out Louie's old barber shop where that used to sit, and just all these locations going down the island, and they're like, okay, okay. I know it doesn't mean as much to them, but on the other hand, Stacy, I'll get people our age in the car with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll talk about those same places, and I can tell when I mention it, they don't remember them as vividly as I do, I guess, because it wasn't that long ago. I had Jolie in the car one day and we had done the same thing. And I started, and she'd say, well, Corey, I forgot all about that. Or I don't remember it at all. Like Carl Lewis's across from the Methodist Church had bowling alleys in it, that big long building. Do you remember it?
I remember the long building.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Do you remember the old schoolhouse pretty good right across the road from it?
Kind of.
Oh my goodness.
Not really good, but kind of. I remember it being there.
Mischievous little boys like to do things that they shouldn't. And I can remember going down there on our bikes. See, here's a story you were wanting to know about growing up on the island and things we did. But we would ride our bikes to places like that. And I remember going in the old schoolhouse.
Now, you went inside?
Yeah, going in it. Yeah, so the old schoolhouse was the school before, I think it was 58, 59, 60, somewhere in there, where the current.
Yeah, it was the late 50s.
Because they had a parade. They marched all the children from the old schoolhouse down. Well, I can remember going down there on our bikes and sneaking in, finding a window open or something like that. And when I say that every square inch of that was tongue and groove wood, like these floors are, when I say every square inch of it, I don't mean just the floors. Every bit of that interior was tongue and groove. The whole thing.
Goodness.
Now, I don't know how or why I'm thinking about that.
But you would go in and you would look and you would notice things like that.
Yeah, just notice that the whole building was wood and it was tongue and groove, and somebody spent a lot of time on the interior of that building. But I can remember going there and going in that place. And
well, you mentioned riding your bike. That's what we used to ride our bikes and walk everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
I can remember we grew up in a household where there was a vehicle, and the father figure had the vehicle at work with him. So until, and I'm saying father figures, until the daddies got home, mamas would send us on errands on our bikes. I can remember got to run to Billy's to go get a head of cabbage or whatever was going to be. And I remember one time I went all the way to Billy's on my bike, and I went home with a lettuce when she had asked for a cabbage. And there was nothing to do, but I had to turn around. And when I got home, I had to turn right around and go all the way back. And another thing that I can remember, I've always been terrible. I'm right side of my brain, not left side. So the arts and all of the things I've already mentioned is easy for me, but numbers baffle me. But the way back in the day at the post office, there was combinations on each box.
Yes.
And it was like a 5-digit, I think.
Yeah, it was too many.
Yeah. I can remember being on my bike and Mama would remind me. She obviously knew something was coming in the mail or maybe hadn't even been that week to check it. And she'd say, go to the mail or to the post office for me. I can remember getting on my bike and riding maybe the 2 miles and the whole way there just telling myself the number like 28554, 28554, 285 because I was afraid I was going to forget it.
I had forgotten about those combinations, but yeah.
Another favorite thing that we used to do as kids when we got old enough. See, I probably should have rewound starting younger because what I'm talking about now would be like in maybe the 8th grade, somewhere in that area. I can remember riding my bicycle everywhere. From one end of the island to the other.
Yep.
And I was allowed to do that starting around the 7th and 8th grade. Before that, my parameters were much smaller. But I recall after school days, 2 or 3 of us friends in the neighborhood would gather and go up to Bobby Leroy's, the Seahorse restaurant.
Seahorse.
Right before you get to Seaside now, on the west end of the island. And you could get like, this is ballpark, but you could get cheeseburger and a soda off from the fountain for like maybe $1.50. And then we would pay for that, a cheeseburger and a drink. And then all of our change together, we would order some French fries, which may have been like 50 cents.
Right.
But all of us had enough change. We would put our money together. And God bless her, she would come out there. Paula would come out there. One of his daughters was working there at the time. Whenever she came out with the one order of fries, it was enough to feed everybody.
It was enough.
Yeah, she looked out for us little boys.
Yes.
But that was something I remember. And those cheeseburgers with those steamed buns, they were the best it's ever been.
So good. Oh.
Yeah.
It's funny because we would eat at the Seahorse, but it was harder to get there for us because we were on this end.
Yeah.
But I would eat, of course, the Listons was our little treat because I could walk there and get there. But, oh, my gosh, we had some good burgers and stuff on the island, didn't we, growing up?
Oh, yeah, my gracious.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned just a second ago, too, about my parameters. But growing up as a little boy, we spent so much time at the landing. And I hate to tell about growing up without mentioning the landing, which has already been well documented by you, but...
No,
we just stayed there, and especially in the summer months, but my goodness, wasn't it fun to be able to, our jeans that we had outgrown from that school year became our shorts, and they would just get cut off, and we stayed barefooted, and people didn't care as much, in the 70s, people didn't care as much about yard and lawn maintenance and upkeep as I do now.
Nope.
But we literally would have like paths through people's in the neighborhood's yards where it would be worn down a little bit, and the path would always be the places where there wasn't any sand spurs because we were barefooted.
Yeah.
And so it was not unusual to have a winding path through someone's yard where you would walk this certain pattern just to get to my neighbor, Carol's. But I recall those paths being in all my friends' yards. You knew exactly where you could walk or not walk unless you wanted to get stuck down, is what we used to call it.
Yep.
But us little boys would somehow be at the shore from early in the morning. Sometimes we would come home for lunch, but a lot of times it was just long enough to grab a snack or a cookie or some Kool-Aid, and we'd be right back.
And what did you do to the landing all that time?
We pulled a lot of boats. We had like little 24, 36-inch boats where we were pulling on, pretending like they were the real island boats. And we would fill them up with periwinkles. That would be our conchs or scallops or whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
Pretend it like they were. On the breakwaters that are all down the island that were put in, off of those rocks, we took some rocks and made our own little harbor. So we would have somewhere where we could go and put our boats to sell our catches and stuff like that.
I love it.
Most island boys had their own little skiff at some point if you were fortunate enough, and I did. In fact, I had several over the years, but we had skiffs that we would pull out in chest deep water. And just jump off of them and swim off of them. They were a swim platform. It was just something to hang out on. Oftentimes we would play a game. I don't know why we called it bear, but if there was a handful more kids show up to swim, one person would be at the front of the boat, and they would count to 10, and all the other kids would be at the stern of the boat, and the old bear would come down one side of the boat or other. And the rules were, if he tagged you, you had to be the bear. Now, if you wasn't the bear, you could go underwater to come up on the other side of the boat to get away from them. But I don't know why we called it bear. But we used to play that all the time. We would have mud fights, go under and just throwing sand at one another until somebody's eyes would get put out, and then that would end that for the day. But we would learn to pole our skiffs and learn how to handle an oar in the little boat. And when I was in about the 7th grade, Daddy came home one day for my little skiff, and he had I think Montgomery Wards or Sears sold what they called seahorse motors.
Seahorse motors.
And the first one I got was a 4 horsepower. Later on, I ended up getting a big 7 horsepower.
Woohoo!
But I remember when I got that, my borders, if you will, were about a quarter mile in either direction. And thinking back on that, I believe it was because that's about how far we could be. And if Mama or Daddy come to the landing where we were overdue, we could either look up and see them still, or if they hollered for us,
could hear it.
I could still hear it. So basically from my shore, which for people listening is where Twin Oaks, you come around Dead Man's Curve on Red's Hill, and it was about a quarter mile off of that. So that's where I was raised and spent my childhood. But the quarter mile in either direction meant I had about a half a mile of shoreline altogether.
Yeah.
So from about where Jack Poole and Nanny Ray's house was, all the way down to about where, Rhoda and Al Gernon live there now, but Perry and Kay Guthrie, Miss Eula, and all of that crowd, Will's boathouse, Will Guthrie's boathouse was there. So that was my area where if Mama needed me, she could holler, and I normally could hear and get back to her real quick. Yeah. I've done the most rambling.
Oh, no, it was awesome because I could see everything.
Yeah. Now, every once in a while, for you all listening, this didn't happen often, but occasionally, getting in around the 7th and 8th and 9th grade, occasionally some girls would show up to the shore to want to lay out back in those days. And they'd lather down in Hawaiian Tropic and baby oil trying to get skin cancer, I think. And all of a sudden, all of us boys would just act even crazier for some reason.
Yeah, put sun in the hair and try to get her hair blonder and blonder. That's true. Oh my gosh, it's good times. I know also that you used to play and do some things at the sand hole. You used to play hide and seek and can tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, in the early 80s, 82, I think it was the summer of 82, I along with about 5 other guys on the east end or the west end of the island, got 3-wheelers. Today it would be a 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
But back in those days, they had this death trap that they call a 3-wheeler. And the sand hole that Stacy mentioned is an area on the northwest end of the island, not far after you come on the bridge. On the left-hand side, there is a hilly white sand. Beautiful place back there that has scrub oaks and hills, almost like dunes, similar to what you see along the coast on the ocean side. Yep. And way before I come along, people would play back there. But when the motorcycles and 3-wheelers,
because you couldn't ride a bicycle back there.
You could not hardly walk through it. The sand was so soft. But those 3-wheelers had these big beach kind of tires on them that would travel over it pretty easy. But we would go out there and just create paths and trails and things to jump and water to ride through. And we just had a blast all back there. And as she mentioned, we would play kind of like tag, and basically we would just chase one another through there on our 3-wheelers. And if you got close enough, we'd say, I got you. And you could turn and ride in another direction, and that person had to try to chase you down.
It was most fun.
It was fun.
Oh, my goodness.
Why more of us didn't get hurt badly back there, I'll never know. There was a few times where there would be wrecks. Paul Boudreaux and Richard Golden run together one time back there, and I think both of them wound up with broken legs. But We sure did have a lot of fun back there doing that.
We did. We sure did.
Another thing in my childhood that was a big deal was having a movie theater.
Yes. Yes.
And
That was a big deal.
it was a big deal, and it seemed huge.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ride by that lot now and you look up there,
It couldn't have
there's
been.
not even a big, but there's a beach house there on stilts that seems tiny to me.
I know.
It's not that big a place, and I wonder sometimes why when I guess when you're younger things seem bigger, but that theater seemed huge.
It did.
And now when you ride by, that lot don't look any bigger than my kitchen at home.
I know.
It's tiny.
I know. And then because the theater burned.
Yep. So after that burned down, then Jerry and Peggy Guthrie rebuilt and turned it into what was very popular at the time was an arcade.
Oh my gracious.
So we didn't have all these gaming consoles that people have now with very realistic games, but we had things like Pac-Man and Cubert and Frogger and pool tables and just at the time it was the most modern cutting edge thing there was. The only other arcade you would ever see is if you happen to travel somewhere like to a mall, there would generally be an arcade section in a mall.
Yeah.
But that was also the place to hang out because they served the nachos and hot dogs and sodas and candy and
Oh, my popcorn. I remember Mama would drop me off with $5.
Oh my land! Well, I only was allowed about $3. See, you crowd were rich.
We
poor.
were rich. That's right. And I was also the you were the baby too, but I was the last one. Mama was like, "Here's $5," but that $5 would last.
Yep.
All night because all the games were just a quarter.
Yep.
It was the most fun. And how about turkeys? Did you ever go down to?
I sure did. Yeah.
Tell them what that is.
Think about the bikes. So when I was a boy, again, this would be early 80s, before the three-wheeler, it was not unusual to get on the bike in the afternoons and evenings for two reasons. We would run down to Turkeys, which was also known as Calico Jacks, and the sport fishing fleet would come in, and there was always 2 or 3 charter boats that would come in, and you get to see the dolphins or the wahoo or whatever they had caught that day. And I just remember, because all we ever caught off of Ellis's dock or fishing off the bridge or something would be eel or pinfish or, nothing, just bait is what we were catching. But they would come in with fish as tall as we were, and it was amazing to see that, like the creatures of the deep being brought in.
Right.
But right across the road from there was the pool.
Yep.
Or like the Beverly Hillbillies called it, the cement pond.
The cement pond.
And so I recall April Lilly, when she was probably in high school, taught swimming lessons.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
She did.
There's several things I'm saying that I see a look on your face like, I remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah. And
I'd forgotten that.
so growing up in the Sound like I did,
Yeah.
I thought I had a grasp on swimming, but you know how you want to do what all the other kids are doing?
Mm-hmm.
When I asked Mama to sign me up for it, and I can I'm about to say remember.
Remember.
When I got in that water, I could tell there was a difference to not only the feel, but it had a chemical smell to it to me that I was not used to. It was the first pool I'd ever been in. It was the chlorine and things.
Chlorine, yeah.
But I also, you're going to say, Corey, come on. I also knew that it felt different. I don't mean just that it had a hard concrete bottom in it. I remember the buoyancy. The difference between the Sound and fresh water felt different to me. And I also recall feeling very confident getting in there because I felt like I knew my way in the water pretty good. But some of the kids were freaking out when she would try to get them to do a backflow, and they were having meltdowns, and it was scaring me to death because I was like, is she drowning them or do they just not know how to swim? But I can remember her teaching us how to float on our backs, or to do what they called the dead man's float, floating down, or to do the jellyfish where you just tucked it like that.
Yeah. That
was the coolest, to just hang out with a bunch of kids. And that was my first experience of being in a pool. But I think your question was, did you come down there? So yeah, it was right behind the pool was the tennis courts too.
Yep.
There was 2 courts there, and it was not unusual for 3 or 4 of us boys to hop on our bikes on a Saturday morning, and if we could get $1, I think it was $1 or $2, and it would get you like half a day. But if you paid $3, you could swim all day.
day. Yeah, that sounds
But
about right.
most of the time, we were spending our mornings at the shore. And when we got older and started paying more attention to girls, all of a sudden about lunchtime, we'd run to the house and get a peanut butter and jelly or something and some Kool-Aid, and then we would beg our parents for $1 or $2, whatever it was. It wasn't much, to ride on our bikes all the way down here to Shell Point. It's only like 3.5, 4 miles.
Yeah,
But I think that's, in thinking about this while I'm talking, time sure has changed, Stacy.
oh, I know.
Because sometimes it's frustrating to me when if my wife Nora asked me to go pick up the younger from school, it's strange to me that they don't do a bus, because that's pretty much all I knew growing up.
Yeah.
I think about Miss Frankie driving the bus. I think about Miss Connie driving the bus. I think about how we respected those bus drivers.
Yeah.
We respected all of our teachers. And we were not afraid of them, but we also, back in those days, there was corporal punishment still was in effect.
There's a paddle.
And we all knew about the paddles, and we did not want to experience that. So we stayed in line.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure that's controversial, what I'm talking about. Some people would say, no. But I think when we knew there was a possibility you could get spanked, it kept us more in line or something,
for
maybe.
Sure.
But now it's my understanding, talking to teacher friends, that the kids are so wild, even on the buses, they don't want their children exposed to what's going on a short bus ride home. And so it's amazing to me when I go to pick up our youngest girl, the line of traffic there, it looks like downtown New York. There's so many cars in and out of there.
Yeah, waiting to pick up their kids. Yeah.
Now, the reason I said that, though, is when I say time sure has changed, Mom and Daddy didn't think twice about letting me get on a bike and go leave.
Yeah.
And about the 3 street lights on the island, when they decided to come on, was about the time that we knew it was time to get on home.
Yeah.
We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have nothing.
Nope.
But
Nope. I remember when you boys would finally come down to the pool, because I can see just as vividly all your bikes like lined up, like where you dropped them. And we'd had the best time.
yeah,
It
was fun.
It was so much fun. And we'd go across, like you said, scrounging your change together. Because if you remember, Turkey had a little store.
Yeah.
And we'd go there and get a pack of nabs, because that was easy to share. Can drink.
And pass the drink around, and 3 or 4 of us would drink out of it.
We'd all drink out of it because we couldn't afford more than that.
It's strange. I'm remembering all that too. But what is strange to me is how, when I say that times are so much different, our parents didn't think twice about us being gone all day.
All day.
And sometimes I notice in the summer months, unless I'm taking everybody out on the boat for the day, the youngers don't hardly ever go in the yard. And with the pool right in the backyard, if they do anything, they'll get in the pool for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but then they're right back in the house, sitting on the couch in the air condition.
Yeah.
And playing video games or holding their phone.
Yeah.
And that is just so different from what I grew up doing.
Yeah.
And having said that, sometimes I wonder why kids don't do more in the yard. But on the other hand, I wouldn't dare expect or want one of my kids. I'm fearful of others, not my kids. It's not that I don't trust my kids. I'm fearful of what can happen. And it's a shame that our society has made, even tiny little Harkers Island has made parents feel overly protective of them.
Yeah.
Where you feel like you need to know exactly where they're at all the
Well,
time.
I know how many times, like, I would check my phone when my kids were driving.
Life 360 or whatever, you're constantly looking to see where they're at.
Yeah. Text me when you get there. Let me know when you get there. Text me when you leave.
Yeah. So I'm not the only one that does that.
No. But Mama didn't do that.
You know, some of my kids are grown now, but I'm always, when you get to wherever you're going, no matter where that is, please call me or text me when you get there.
Yeah.
and they don't forget. Daddy's not the first thing on their mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A little girl that I love was going to Greenville last night and was long overdue for my text, and I patiently waited about 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And finally, I called, Gracie, where are you at? Oh, Daddy, I'm sorry. I forgot to let you know I'm here. I'm fine. We're eating.
Uh-huh.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Mine do the same. Mine do the same.
Here's something else I want to share.
Uh-huh.
This is, I've been in a duck blind all day today, which, by the way, my youngest girl shot her first ducks today.
Yes.
Today was youth and veterans hunts were allowed. The season actually ended yesterday, but youth can go today and veterans and next Saturday.
Okay.
And she has been with me 5 or 6 times this year. And today she finally got the courage up, I think, to shoot that gun. And she got her first ducks. But
What does she
she
shoot?
got what most little island kids get, a buffle head.
A buffle head.
Because there seems to be plenty of those around. So
Wow,
I'm
that's
proud of
awesome.
Elise for accomplishing that today. I told her, I said, I'm just as tickled as I could be. But
I bet she was tickled too.
now something else I love about that is, I'm like your dad, I carve my own decoys.
Yes.
And anybody can buy some plastic ones to go throw out, but the birds that we were hunting over was some that, and I made her a little hen buffle head, and that was the first thing she shot. One come right in there and lit with that, and yeah, she got her
Corey,
bird today.
that's perfect.
But the reason that's a segue into what I was going to say about me growing up. When I was just talking about parents and not letting us go we today wouldn't want them gone. And before I had driver's license, I was getting in a boat and going duck hunting. Before day, I would leave. And sometimes I would come home 10, 11 o'clock, but other times I wouldn't be home till after dark. And I wasn't going far away from my landing. Middle Marsh was the closest place. Middle Marsh, or I'd run around to North River Marshes. But this is just something that just came to mind. That was with no cell phone.
Yeah.
That was no radio. That wasn't the big cabin Parker boat that I took her in this morning. It was in like a 16-foot wooden skiff with a 25 Mariner on it. You'd get beat to death and soaking wet on the way there in frigid temperatures. And back then, we didn't have the Gore-Tex nice warm clothes. We just looked like the Marshmallow Man with so much on you couldn't move. And you would still freeze and be miserable and cold. But another thing that I was thinking about how they allowed me to go do that is amazing to me, because if my oldest son, David, who's 28 now, wanted to go, I would be a nervous wreck until I heard back from him.
Yeah. I know.
I recall, though, going to the land and getting in the boat and leaving. I don't hardly ever remember coming back that somehow Daddy weren't standing on the shore. And I wondered how long he must. I didn't think about it then. I never considered it. I always just assumed he knew it was about time for me to be in, so he was there. But
How long had he stood there waiting?
I wonder if it's not more like, people sometimes think I'm a preacher or something. I get asked if I'm a preacher. I'm not a preacher. But things are important to me.
Yeah.
That can be learned from the scriptures. And I wonder if it's not more along the lines of like the prodigal son. And when it talks about how he went off and squandered and done his things, when he was coming back, it says that his father saw him from a long way off. And I don't know if it was that he just happened to magically know when I was going to be back, or if he wasn't sitting there looking for me from a long way off.
Yeah.
Just making sure I got home safe.
Which is probably more like it.
I think that's more like it, yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Woo. We were blessed with the childhoods that we had, and we took a lot for granted. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't thank my Heavenly Father for my parents, for my life on the island, for growing up here, for my friends. I mean, we're so blessed.
Yeah.
So very blessed.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, as bad as I hate to say this, our time has gone. But before I let you go, you got to promise me something.
What?
Because I'm going to have it on record.
Okay.
You will come back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'd love to come back. This has been fun.
Is there anything that you want to say before we go?
Yeah, but I'll save that. If you ask me back, I'll share another story which will include you.
Well, now you got my curiosity up.
I can't rush this story, and it's going to make you go way over.
Oh, okay.
You're familiar with it though, because I'm pretty sure I've told you before. But our listeners haven't heard it, so stay tuned for episode 2 with Corey.
It will continue.
Yeah, this went by way too quick, and
Thank you for coming, and I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for joining us again to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. I am your host, Stacy Davis Basden, and today's podcast was produced by April Davidson. Tune in again next week as we continue remembering, sharing, and learning together. Until then, stay safe and be kind.